you're thinking about selling a home in Alamo Heights, there's something you need to understand before you make a single move, because this is one of those markets where sellers just assume things will work out because of the name, the location, the reputation. And while that assumption feels logical on the surface, it's also exactly where a lot of value starts to quietly slip away. Not because the market is weak, but because it is precise. And precision means small mistakes have bigger consequences, and those consequences do not show up in obvious ways at first. They show up in slower activity, softer offers, and longer time on the market, and subtle negotiation pressures that most sellers cannot quite identify until they're already in it. And by that point, the leverage you had at the beginning has already begun to shift. Alamo Heights is one of the most recognized and consistently desirable areas in San Antonio, but that does not mean every home performs the same. And it definitely does not mean every home is forgiven for poor positioning, because buyers in this market are not just buying a location. They're buying into an expectation, and that expectation is very specific. And more importantly, it is already performed before they ever walk into your home. That means when your home hits the market, buyers are not walking in neutral. They are walking in with a mental benchmark of what they believe a home at your price point in this neighborhood should feel like. And if your home does not match that expectation within the first few moments of their experience, hesitation starts immediately. And hesitation is the beginning of lost leverage, because buyers who hesitate either write differently or they don't write at all. One of the biggest misunderstandings sellers have in Alamo Heights is thinking that they are being compared directly to other homes in a simple side-by-side way. That's not actually how buyers are making decisions here. Buyers are comparing your home to a standard, not to other listings. And that standard is built from everything they have seen leading up to your home, including properties that might not even currently be on the market. And that's why no two homes with similar square footage and layout can perform the same, because one aligns with an internal standard and the other does not. Alignment is everything in this market. When a home feels aligned, it feels easy. When it feels easy, buyers move forward. And when it feels slightly off, even if they cannot explain why, they pause. And that pause is where momentum disappears. And momentum, especially in the first 7 to 10 days on the market, is one of the most valuable assets you have as a seller. That early window is when your most serious buyers are paying attention. They're making fast decisions about which homes are worth their time and which ones are not. And those decisions are often made before they ever schedule a showing, which means your positioning, your pricing, and your presentation all have to work together from the very beginning, because if they do not, you risk missing the strongest part of the market cycle for your listing. This is where pricing becomes more than just a number. Pricing is a signal. It tells buyers how to categorize your home before they even see it. And if that signal is misaligned, everything that follows becomes more difficult. If you price too high relative to how the home feels, buyers approach it with skepticism. If you price too low without intention, you could create confusion about value or attract the wrong expectations. And once those expectations are set, they are very difficult to reset. The goal is not just to price correctly in a numerical sense. The goal is to price in a way that aligns with perception, because perception is what drives behavior, and behavior is really what drives offers. This is all where preparation becomes one of the most overlooked but impactful parts of the entire process. Many sellers believe that because Alamo Heights is a strong market, preparation can be minimal. But in reality, preparation is what determines whether your home meets or misses what that buyer expectation we talked about earlier. Preparation is not about making your home perfect. It's about making your home make sense. It's about creating a level of clarity where buyers can walk in and immediately understand what they're looking at, how it fits into the neighborhood, and why it is priced the way it is. And that clarity does not happen by accident. It is built over time through a series of intentional decisions, and those decisions should start well before the home ever hits the market. When preparation is rushed, what happens is small inconsistencies that start to stack up. Maybe the finishes don't feel cohesive. Maybe there are minor maintenance items that signal neglect. Maybe the layout feels slightly disjointed because the presentation was not thought through. And none of these things on their own seem like deal breakers, but together they create friction. And friction is what slows buyers down. And in a market where buyers already have a clear expectation, anything that slows them down will work against you. Another critical piece to understand is that updates in Alamo Heights are expected. but they're not blindly rewarded. This is not a market where you can simply put money into a home and expect a direct return. Buyers are evaluating how those updates were done, whether they feel cohesive, whether they align with the overall structure of the home, whether they enhance the experience or disrupt it. Over improving in the wrong direction can actually reduce perceived value because it creates a disconnect between what the home is and what it's trying to be, and buyers pick up on that very quickly. That is why the question that not is whether their house should be updated, but really the question is, how do we update it strategically? Another layer that influences how your home will perform is the type of buyer it is likely to attract. And this is where understanding buyer psychology becomes critical. Buyers in Alamo Heights are not a single group. They operate differently depending on the price range they're shopping in, and that difference directly affects how they respond to your home. In lower price ranges within the neighborhood, buyers tend to be more focused on condition and predictability. They're paying closer attention to potential future costs, and they are more sensitive to anything that introduces uncertainty. In mid-range pricing, buyers looking for balance. They want the home to feel updated, functional, cohesive, and they are evaluating both design and usability at the same time. In higher price ranges, buyers tend to focus more on overall experience, quality, and how the home aligns with their expectations for the neighborhood. And while they may be less reactive to minor issues, they are more sensitive to anything that feels out of place at a higher level. Understanding these differences allow you to position your home in a way that speaks directly to the mindset of the buyer most likely to engage with it. And when the alignment is achieved, everything becomes easier. When it's not, the process becomes slower and less predictable. And this is where most sellers start to realize that selling in Alamo Heights is not about putting it on the market and waiting to see what happens. It is about controlling how the home is introduced, how it is perceived, and how it is experienced from the very first moment a buyer encounters it. And that is usually the point where sellers start to realize that what feels like should be a straightforward process on the surface is actually a sequence of decisions that all connect to each other. And if one of those decisions is off, even slightly, it starts to affect everything that follows. And this is also the point where it makes sense to step back for a second and give you context for where this perspective is coming from, because none of this is theoretical. It comes directly from working inside the market and watching how these patterns repeat over and over again. My name is Caroline. I focus on helping sellers in the San Antonio area, especially areas like Alamo Heights, understand how to position their home so they are not just listed, but understood immediately by buyers who are most likely to act. Because in a market like this, understanding what creates confidence, and confidence really is what drives the offers. And without that, even a well-located home can underperform in ways that are difficult to recover from once the listing is live. This is where the preparation process becomes one of your most important levers. And the reason it matters so much is because preparation is what creates alignment before the market ever has a chance to respond. When we talk about 90, 60, 30-day preparation framework, this is not about stretching out a timeline unnecessarily. It's about giving each phase a specific purpose so that decisions are made with clarity instead of urgency. At the 90-day stage, the focus is not on making the home look better. It is understanding the home on a deeper level. This is where you evaluate the systems, the condition, and the overall functionality in a comprehensive way. This is where inspections, evaluations, and early assessments come into play. Not because you are expecting everything to be perfect, but because you are removing the uncertainty before it becomes part of the negotiation. One of the biggest shifts that happens is when you approach preparation this way is that you move from reacting to issues to anticipating them. And that shift changes the entire tone of the transaction later. When a buyer discovers something during their inspection that you did not anticipate, it introduces doubt. And when you already understand the condition of the home and you have context around it, you are able to address those conversations with clarity instead of defensiveness. And that difference directly affects how negotiations unfold. As you move into the 60-day phase, this is where strategy turns into execution. But this is also where discipline matters the most, because one of the fastest ways to lose money in Alamo Heights is to start making improvements without a clear framework. This is where sellers often over-improve or improve in ways that do not align with buyer expectations. And while the intention is to increase value, the result can actually create a disconnect. This phase should be focused on target decisions. What needs to be refined so the home feels cohesive? What needs to be addressed so the home feels maintained? What should remain untouched so the character and flow of the home stay intact? These are questions that guide this stage, and the goal is not to make the home feel new. The goal is to make the home feel complete. There is a difference, and buyers can sense that difference almost immediately when they walk through the door. By the time you reach the final 30 days, the focus shifts to presentation, and this is where perception is fully shaped. This is where staging, lighting, layout, and final adjustments come together to create an experience that feels intentional. Buyers are not just evaluating features at this stage, they are deciding how easy it feels to move forward with the home, and that ease is created through clarity. When a home is presented in a way that feels cohesive and aligned, buyers do not have to work to understand. It makes sense immediately. And when something makes sense quickly, it reduces hesitation. That reduction in hesitation is what allows buyers to act with more confidence, and that confidence is what translates into stronger offers. Now, as preparation leads into pricing, this is where many seller decisions are based on numbers without fully taking into account how those numbers will be interpreted. Pricing in Alamo Heights is not just about similar homes and what they have sold for. It's about how your home fits in within the current landscape of buyer expectations. And that is where pricing psychology becomes critical. When a buyer sees your home online, the price is the first filter they apply, and that price immediately creates a set of expectations about what they are about to see. If the experience of the home matches or slightly exceeds that expectation, the buyer feels validated. If it falls short, even slightly, hesitation begins before they even step inside. This is why pricing has to be aligned with perception, not just data. A well-positioned price creates curiosity and engagement. It invites buyers in. A misaligned price creates doubt, and doubt reduces activity. Another important factor to consider is how pricing interacts with the first 7 to 10 days on the market. This is where momentum is either built or missed, and the momentum is not something you can easily recreate once it's gone. When a home is priced correctly and presented well, it captures attention early, and that attention creates a sense of movement around the listing. Buyers begin to perceive it as something that others are interested in, and that perception can influence how quickly they act. When a home enters the market without alignment, activity tends to be slower, and slower activity changes how buyers interpret the opportunity. Instead of feeling like something they need to move on, it starts to feel like something they can wait on. And when buyers feel like they can wait, they often do. And that is where leverage begins to shift away from the seller. As offers start to come in, this is where the structure of the deal becomes just as important as the price itself. One of the most common mistakes sellers make is focusing primarily on the number without fully evaluating the terms that come with it. Price is only one part of the equation. Terms, timelines, contingencies, and overall structure contribute to the strength of an offer, and in many cases, a slightly lower price with cleaner terms can produce a better overall outcome than a higher price that introduces uncertainty. This is where preparation, once again, becomes an advantage, because when you understand your position clearly, you are able to evaluate offers from a place of confidence rather than reaction. You're able to see where there is flexibility and where there is risk, how to structure a response that keeps the transaction moving in a direction that aligns with your goals. Inspection negotiations are another point where preparation plays a significant role. In Alamo Heights, buyers often come in with the expectation that homes will be well maintained. And when expectations reveal issues that contradict that expectation, it can create a shift in how they view the property. This does not mean that issues cannot exist. It means they need to be understood and addressed in a way that does not introduce unnecessary doubt. When you have already identified potential concerns and have a context around them, you're able to navigate these conversations with clarity, and that clarity helps maintain buyer confidence. When buyers feel confident, they're more likely to stay engaged and move forward, even when challenges arise. As all of these elements come together, what becomes clear is that selling in Alamo Heights is not about any single decision. It's about how each decision connects to the next. Preparation influences pricing. Pricing influences activity. Activity influences leverage, and leverage influences negotiation. And when all of these are aligned, the process becomes more predictable and more controlled. When they are not, the process becomes reactive, and reactive processes tend to produce less consistent outcomes. And this is where everything we have talked about starts to come together in a way that is much easier to see when you walk through it step by step. Because understanding concepts is one thing, but seeing how they actually play out in a real scenario is what allows you to apply them correctly. So imagine a home in Alamo Heights that is about to come on the market. It's well located. It has good square footage. It has a mix of updates that have been done over time. On paper, it looks competitive. The numbers suggest it should perform well, but as you walk through the home, there are small inconsistencies that start to appear. The flooring transitions from room to room do not feel intentional. The lighting fixtures vary in style in a way that does not feel cohesive. There are a few areas where maintenance has been deferred and nothing major individually, but enough that it creates a subtle sense that the home has not been fully dialed in. None of these things are deal breakers on their own, but this is where most sellers get caught off guard because they look at each item individually and assume it will not matter. But buyers do not experience the home one item at a time. They experience it as a whole, and when the small inconsistencies stack up, they create friction. And that friction does not always show up as a clear objection. It shows up as hesitation, and hesitation is what changes how buyers behave. Now compare that to a similar home that may be priced like slightly higher, but everything feels aligned. The finishes make sense together. The layout flows naturally. The presentation feels intentional from the moment you walk in. Buyers do not have to work to understand it. It makes sense immediately. And because it makes sense, it feels easier to say yes to. And that's the difference between a home that generates strong activity and one that struggles to gain traction and has very little to do with the obvious metrics that most sellers focus on. That is why preparation and positioning matter so much more than people expect, because they directly influence how a home is experienced. And that experience is what drives decision making. I'm Caroline Deckard with Phyllis Browning Group. I work with Suzanne Marco. We love helping sellers in Alamo Heights get their homes prepped, ready to go, and get the top possible dollar amount in the shortest amount of time. Please call us if you have questions. We'd love to work with you.